Hi my beautiful lovelies and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is JOYCY and in today's video I wanted to do something different by talking about the orphan wound. So this is part of the ancestral cleaning I've been doing for myself. I've been trying to identify different core ancestral wounds and how to communicate this to other people, because last year has been a deep thoroughly ancestral cleaning and whatnot. And for me, it was all over the place and very scattered on my journey. But at some point I was okay, I'm starting to get towards the end of it. How can I share this information for those who would benefit from it? But especially, how can I compact it in a way that it's comprehensible and not as scattered as I experienced? So one of the things I wanted to do is do these talking videos where I talk about these different ancestral wounds. And towards the end, I also want to create a video where I use both affirmations, Ho'oponopono, and musical therapy as a tool for to empower people to do the ancestral cleaning themselves. As I know that there's a lot of information and stuff that we don't know, but that doesn't mean that we have to wait on some outside force to save us. I don't think with this, there are things that we have control and mastery over and that we can empower ourselves in. I'm not gonna wait for something else to save me, because if you're waiting for something else to save you, you also empower them to do the opposite. And a lot of people, they would benefit if you would stay in the victim mode. And also knowing that 90% of us is unconscious, I think it's very useful, empowering, and necessary to do the shadow work, which includes ancestral cleaning, to truly empower yourself, but also to make the 90% more visible, so you're the master of yourself and not the victim or the prey to other people who know how to dominate your shadow. So the orphan wound, I wanted to give a bit of a context if you're new to this channel. My dad had a drinking problem. It was something that was very traumatizing to live around, to be around somebody who's in deep turmoil and deep pain. And then so even though physically he was there, emotionally he was absent. So I also am an orphan of a father, because he wasn't the dad that he was supposed to be, because he was still troubled and in deep pain himself. I remember when I was little, I always thought it was my fault and my responsibility to save him. So I remember going to the library and reading on books on self-improvement. And even though my aim was to try and save him, it made me deeply aware of how many ways being around this dysfunction was making me a prey for these familiar patterns of dysfunction in my family. So one of the things that I did was doing my own research on why my dad became the way he did. Even today, when I see somebody who's in deep pain or turmoil, I always try to understand what is the root of the pain, what caused it. So I don't take people at first value or face value, or the first pain or experience or encounter you have. There's always something deeper behind it. And the same thing was for my dad. So there's so many different traumatic events that he experienced when he was younger. One of the things was when he was 16 or 17, he lost his dad. So all the burden and the responsibility of being the man of the house fell on his and his brother's shoulders. When he was 18 or 19, back in the days, Cape Verde was still a colony of Portugal. So he had to go to the army and fight in the war in Angola. So he was like I said, 18 or 19, which is extremely young. And when they were fighting there, they would give them injections first to not feel any fear, so they will become literal the robots. They can control killing machines. And then by the end of it, they also gave him injections to forget about what had happened. When he was there, he almost lost his arm because he had a big scar here. So they told him he had to get amputated, which he didn't, because at some point one doctor told him hey, if you go to Portugal, they can still save it. So, and I also know when he was little, he also almost died because he had physical and health issues. So there's a series of things that made my dad who he was. So even though I always thought it was my fault, it wasn't, because he was in his own pain body, his own emotional pain body. And the fact that he's a man in a culture where you're you have to be the big macho and strong masculine man, you're not even allowed to cry. And for me, what I noticed is because my dad's drug of choice was alcohol. So what I noticed, like, because people, when they tend to grab for liquids, it's because like they're in deep grief, deep pain, deep sorrow, and deep sadness. They don't know how to cry it out. So then the liquid becomes the gateway for how to like express that deep inner sadness that they're feeling. And although it gives you like temporary relief, it doesn't exude or like exempt you from the pain that you're feeling. And you're not allowed to talk about, because you have to be this tough, big macho man. So as a dad, like, he was physically absent. If he was absent, a lot of times he was very violent, and he also had epilepsy. So there were many moments. First of all, like, I never felt safe around him. Like, when he would be like very calm, it almost felt like a volcano almost waiting to erupt. So if you look at the emotional climate, it was always very unstable, very unsafe. And on top of that, I had to experience so much racism on the streets. So like, there was never a point where I had like my safe space. And therefore it was really hard staying in my body, because like it was always so safe. So I was always like escaping mentally. So I was like made orphan in many different ways. One, because like my dad wasn't the person he was supposed to be, even though like there are many blessings and lessons that I learned from it. So I'm not like trying to blame it on the situation, whatever, because I personally believe we choose our parents. So I know why I chose my dad and the lessons I was meant to learn from it. On top of that, I was also made orphan of a society where I was unwelcome. So everything was like, you have to adapt or change, you need to leave. And I don't know how many times I heard like, go back to your effing country. So that was on a continuous basis where I always felt unsafe. So after my dad passed away, I think I was like around 19 when he passed away, due to his drinking problems, which led to other health issues. I still have continued this journey of forgiveness and trying to understand what had happened, but also because like I knew that growing up around so much dysfunction, I had a lot of work to do for myself, because like then I would be like an easy target for like players or like, you know, other people, like in specifically like whether it's like friendships or like intimate relationships. I would continue to reproduce this wound unless I attend to it. So I know that my dad is one of my spirit guides, and last year I had a specific dream, and when I woke up to the song of that Jew, which is called Papa. So I had heard the song before, but I never stopped to listen to the lyrics. I usually like feel the energy of the song and necessarily like go sit and listen to the lyrics. So I had heard the song before, and it's a very upbeat and nice song, but I never stopped to listen to the lyrics. So when I woke up to the song, I was like, oh, maybe that's a message that my dad is trying to use. And it's interesting because like I'm so happy he chose an African song. It's the first time I'm getting a song like as a synchronicity from him. I get a lot of synchronistic and divine messages through music, but that was the first time I was getting that. So I put the song on because like, okay, there's a message in it, but I don't know exactly what. I first checked the lyrics, which talks about that Jew's pain about his dad and also how he was made an orphan. Again, not because his dad died. It was because his dad abandoned him. So he was talking about this pain, and like I think it's so beautiful that he put his pain in this music and then alchemized it in something so beautiful. Because usually you would associate pain with like a sad song, and this song is so upbeat and so joyful, which talks about, you know, like you can feel like this pain and sadness, but you can still transcend it into joy and abundance, which he did beautifully with this song. So as I was listening to the song, I sat down and then wrote a lot of things. So I put orphan in the middle, and then I channeled what messages were coming through. So like there's a lot of things that come with being an orphan and the orphan wound. Because you're abandoned, then you learn to become very self-reliant, super independent, because you don't know and you haven't had the love and support from others. So then you become super self-reliant, independent, and this can have like, it can be like a double-edged sword. Like it's good to be independent, but not to a fault where you don't know how to ask for help. And I mean, some people who are orphan are made homeless, so they don't feel safe, they don't have a base or foundation. You're emotionally malnourished, so there are so many complications that come with the orphan wound. And although like you know, a lot of times when it's visible, then you know, okay, this could be it. But there are a lot of people who have a hidden orphan wound, and especially like if you deal with pain of rejection, emotional abandonment, if those things hit hard, it's because like you have this orphan wound still in you that is asking and crying for attention. So in pop culture, so besides this song, two examples of the orphan wound that you can like study and analyze are the Duke of Bridgerton and the Queen of Gambit. So spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, don't skip this bit. For example, in the Duke of Bridgerton, his daddy didn't pass away. Like his dad deeply rejected him because like he didn't live up to his super high standards, which were ridiculous anyways. And then he promised himself that he didn't want to become a father because he didn't want to continue this legacy of his dad, and he felt like he was punishing him. So he didn't have the dad he wanted. He had to become super self-reliant. He didn't have the support, love, and kindness that the dad is supposed to give to you, and also this like encouragement and discipline that comes with it. So he had to become like super self-independent, self-reliant, and in his case, then he became like a womanizer. He sleeps around with so many women, not having an emotional connection because he's deeply disconnected from himself. And a lot of times, like with men, because like the range of emotions in the landscape is so limited, they will only be able to manifest this orphan wound or through overthinking or through their sacral chakra. So the sacral chakra could be like a lot of creativity, but it also can manifest as the Duke of Bridgerton when sleeping around with so many women, because he's trying to move this energy from this deep pain, this deep grief and sadness and sorrow that he's feeling. He's trying to move that energy, and because like, you know, a guy sleeping around with so many women is seen as ideal, a lot of men don't necessarily realize that beside a bodily function, the pleasure has been cross-wired with pain, and it's also a form of therapy for them to move that energy. So if you look at Bridgerton and then look at the Duke of Bridgerton from this orphan wound lens, then you will see so many things there that you could particularly recognize in yourself. Even the way like he made his promise to his dad, but then he was deeply punishing himself and then deeply disconnecting himself from real experiencing true emotional connection and intimacy in his relationship. Another example is the Queen of Gambits. So she became like this genius in terms of chess. I mean, just to be noted, both of them are fiction, but still it really beautifully highlights this orphan wound. So with the Queen of Gambits, I remember one day I was watching 3 things on Netflix, and every time like orphan is okay, let me look at this. And this one was one of them. So even though the Queen of Gambits was made orphan at first, so in her case, her mom really died. So she went to an orphanage, and there she became acquainted with chess playing. And that would have never happened if she wasn't becoming an orphan first. And the thing is, like, she had a brilliant mind, and that made her excel at what she was doing. But she would have never become such a wizard and a genius at chess playing if she wasn't an orphan in the first place. So in her case, it was really to maximize on her genius. And if she would have been a regular kid, then she would have been distracted with the normal stuff that a kid is supposed to do. But in her case, like, all these things were taken away, and she had to become tougher and harder, because those were also the qualities that she needed in order to become an excellent chess player. So that is those two are just like a way to highlight the fact that this orphan wound has a light and a shadow side. So even though like there's a lot of pain and scrutiny that comes with this orphan wound and how it manifests in the outside world, whether it's through yourself or through the circumstances around your life or the people you encounter, it also has a light aspect which manifests. For example, in the case of Queen Gambit, it allowed her to like really maximize this potential she had as this genius, brilliant chess player. So in my case, this orphan wound is not only ancestral, it's also tied to my inner child, but it also has to do with my past life. And the thing is, like, beside you having experienced this orphan wound, it's also like a very primal wound, because, like, you know, once upon a time, if you didn't fit in and belong in a society, it was surviving versus dying. If you didn't belong to a tribe or a community, then you had no way to sustain yourself, to feed yourself and whatnot. So more than just like, you know, the surface level of this wound, whether it's like inner child, ancestral, etc., it also taps into this deeper primal core wound that everybody experiences. So then, like, it might seem like weird that you might react in such an exaggerated way, like if you don't feel like you belong or like you're accepted somewhere, but that's because it also has this primal core wound to it. And that's why a lot of people, like, they really want to belong and they really want to be accepted because they're afraid of dying. Even though, like, nowadays, like, it wouldn't necessarily mean that you would die, but still it feels like it. So it's important that you become aware of it, because then you can become the master of your orphan wound, instead of it being something that other people can weaponize against you. The orphan wound also has two phases, so it's both extroverted and introverted. So the orphan wound, when it's extroverted, is because, like, you have been abandoned, whether it's by your parents or even being an orphan of your society, where you're like rejected, discriminated, racism, if you have a particular sexual preference and then people outcast you, like any outcast, outlaw, black sheep, those are orphans. You don't have to be like a literal orphan of mother and your father. It can be like many ways in which you have been deeply abandoned simply for being who you are. Then the introverted orphan wound is when you abandon yourself. You abandon your needs, you abandon your beliefs, your truth, because you want to belong. You want to people please others. So this need to belong then makes you abandon yourself. But once you start by abandoning yourself, you're already lost. So the end result will be like other people abandoning you or like criticizing you, and it will hit harder because like you already started by abandoning yourself. So with this orphan wound, it's extremely important to take time for self-reflection, but also to create this deep awareness about where it comes from, but also how you recognize it within yourself. Take full responsibility, don't blame others, because other people are only echoing what is already deeply inside of you. So a lot of times I want to feel something is not fair, whatnot. And I mean, like, I'm not talking about actual things that are not fair, but a lot of times, like, it will hurt deeper because there's already a wound within us that is asking for our attention, and then the divine will architect in such a way that people will be brought in your life that will reflect to you the pain that you're already experiencing inside. So you can choose to remain in that familiar pain pattern or choose to evolve. So love yourself enough to say no more. Love yourself enough to say, I deserve better. Because the thing is, like, we don't need more wounded people projecting from their wounds. We need people who love themselves enough to act and co-create from their worth. So a lot of times, like, you know, this deep grief and sorrow and sadness, like, it will manifest in your body. So not only your behavior, but also in your body. And this doesn't mean that you're a victim of your genetics, because even though we can inherit, and we do inherit trauma in our genetics and things are hereditary, that doesn't mean it has to be a continuation of the old pain. You can co-create by becoming aware of this pain and then utilizing it, transcending it, alchemizing it, so it becomes an ally. It can become a tool for a better future for yourself. Use your body and any physical ailments you might have as a guide. Look where this is coming from, and not just looking at the symptoms and trying to cover it up with medicine, but look deeper into it. Like, one of the things that I experienced and that I absolutely loved was energy medicine. And there's this guy called John Amaral, which helps you like do a body scan and like moving the energy. But I think it's also very powerful if you can look at a specific thing and then ask yourself, what is the emotion behind this? And I know in another video I talked about my pancreas. This is something I've been really like trying to empower myself, both with the food and the emotional aspect that comes with it and the spirituality. And I remember one time tuning into it and asking myself, what is the emotion behind that is causing this pain? And because my dad had it and his mother had it, I know like it's an ancestral thing. And like knowing more about my dad's, you know, emotional destructive patterns, like it really gives me an insight into a familiar pattern that I'm repeating and that is stuck in me, but it doesn't mean I have to be a prisoner of it. So the feeling that came up was a feeling of powerlessness. And if I look at my dad, then he must have felt like this when he was in the war. And after, like, there's a before and after him after the war. Like, he came back with PTSD, and that led to, like, his drinking problem and whatnot, and the other combinations as well. But, like, that was, like, a really big catalyst, like, that really derailed him completely. And I felt powerless in that situation because, like, I didn't know how I could help him. But I also felt powerless in the place I was in. I don't even say I was living there. I was trying to survive because, like, it was continuous pain. Like, dealing with so much racism, it also made me feel powerless, especially because I experienced it as a kid. So then our bodies are also communicating with us, whether it's through pain or through joy. And it's not only when it reaches its climax, when it comes to pain, that we should attend to it. Like, we can already give it the love and attention that it's asking, but especially because it helps us empower ourselves and then find the keys that will unlock our fullest potential. So with this, what I want to say is that you can master yourself, you can master your shadow, because, like, we have no control on the outside world, and there's so many things that we don't need to understand. I don't understand, and the more you grow, you will realize how little you know. But there's always a place where you have a space for control and mastery, and that is the control of yourself, the mastering of yourself, and the mastering of your shadow. So this orphan wound lies deeply within your shadow, and that's why it's really important to, like, attend to it, because then once you master and befriend your shadow, it becomes an ally on your journey. And I mean, like, Peter Pan tried to get rid of the shadow, there's no getting rid of it. What I know is, like, a lot of times people are trying to run away from it by covering it up, I don't know, like with drugs, relationships, any, like, addictive behavior in order to numb the pain, or, like, to feel something because they're so numb and they don't not feeling anything. The thing is, like, when you master your shadow, like, the outside world will not feel as scary, because, like, they can only reflect and trigger the things that are in your shadow, which is hidden, which is not in plain sight, which is in the dark. And once you have the courage to explore it, the outside world will seem less scary, because, like, you're already, like, coming as a full person. You're coming as a whole person, not as a fragmented person. So the last thing I also wanted to add is musical therapy. So as I was looking at the word orphan, I was like, okay, let me see if there's, like, a hidden word or a clue in it. And the word harp is hidden in the word orphan. So as I was Googling, there's also a music instrument called orphan harp. And there was this woman who used, like, all these kind of woods that were orphan and then created this harp. And harp music is really, really good as music therapy, especially if you have the orphan wound, because it's really calming, really soothing, and it creates this safe space. And a lot of times when you're, like, deeply in this orphan wound, you feel unsafe because, like, you're afraid of being abandoned, rejected, and not having a foundation or support system. And in the future, I will be creating a video, as I mentioned before, where I use a mix of affirmations, Ho'oponopono, and musical therapy, because I feel like when you use these different elements, like, it helps you transcend the pain, because a lot of times the pain is deeply stuck in our bodies, and when we can transcend it, then we can detach from it, and then we can empower ourselves in a better and much better way, where, like, we're allies on the journey to our happiness, instead of feeling like we're working against ourselves and getting trapped in these toxic familiar patterns that we don't want to have anyways. So to finish off, I wanted to read a passage from these diary notes that I write. It's not really a diary, it's, like, more like sometimes I want to write stuff because I want to get clarity in my head, but also when I get, like, divine channeled messages, and I write it down. And I hadn't written in a really long time, and as I was starting this new one, I read the last one I wrote, and I thought it would be a beautiful ending for this video. So now I wanted to read it to finish this video off, and also as an invitation for you to reflect on your own orphan wound. The emptiness is an invitation to sit in stillness. Are you comfortable with nothing, or do you need something in order to feel? Nothing is the space where spirit resides, yet we live in an ego-driven world where labels, titles, and status symbols are our identity cards. When we are overly identified with it, we lose touch with our true core, our heart center, that connects us with the divine and allows it to guide us. When you are nothing, this means that the past has no hold of you and the future hasn't begun yet. If you're nothing, this means you have all the freedom in the world to create something you like, the highest expression of yourself that is the image of the divine. The old and false identity needs to crumble so your soul can manifest in the physical. But so many of us are scared of it and hold on for dear life to what is familiar because we know it. Going over the edge of familiarity pushes us into unknown territory and we don't know what to expect there. It could be better or worse, but we won't ever know it unless we let go and surrender what was, so what is can come into fruition. Thank you so much for watching, and give it a big thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comment section down below. I wanted to start this video series because like 90% of us is unconscious, which means that there's so much knowledge and power in our shadow because like it's 90% of what we don't know. So I hope this information brought you some light and empowers you in a way to like explore your shadow with courage. I love exploring my shadow, so it has been a long ongoing journey. I'm grateful that my dad is my spirit guide because like a lot of the things that are part of my shadow and my core wounds were inflicted by him. So to have him as a spirit guide helping me transcend this, I am beyond grateful. And I also like ask him like to empower me, like assist me in this video, because I feel like it's not only my wound, it's something that I see and witness with others as well. And because, you know, when they say know thyself, the more you know thyself, the more you will see others for who they are. And that is something truly beautiful, because then you see how people are connected, but then you also see like your joy and your pain in others. And I want people to be free. And like something that I absolutely have been like embodying throughout my life was like the embodiment of joy and freedom. And freedom also comes from befriending your shadow. So I hope this video resonated with you. Let me know what you thought of it in the comment section below, and I will see you in my next video.